we continue talking about tools to help us fashion a positive perspective on life, on people, starting with knowing we have a great life and focusing on compassion. As I look at the world around me, I have no clue. Even if I think I know everything, I have no clue what's going on in someone else's life. I have no clue why they're behaving the way they are, but there could be a lot of good reasons for it. And that compassionate judgment so helps me be judged compassionately and so helps me have the positive perspective for my children, for my husband, for the world around me.
Baseless love is the same idea. Baseless hatred is, I hate you, and then I'll figure out why. Baseless love is, I love you, and then I'll figure out why. How do you achieve a love you? Shira?
Can you explain the baseless hatred? What does that mean? Like I don't like you because you're taking up my space. What does that mean?
What that means is it's not good, but if someone is harming you and you feel a negative energy for them, a negative feeling, now that's not good and that's not admirable and that's not even allowed. But you know why you don't like this person, whatever. I mean, we can all think of examples of people in our world that have hurt us. So if we're in a situation with someone that's hurt us in some fashion and we have bad feelings for them, that girl was always mean to my daughter. She always made all the girls in the class not like her. That person was my husband's business competitor. He cut him out of all of his deals. This neighbor of mine, somehow everything I tried to do, she always made me problems, with other people on the block, with the government, whatever. Now, it's not good that when people hurt you, you don't feel positive towards them. If we were more saint-like, we would accept it all. We would know it all comes from Hashem. We would say they're just Hashem's tools and we would be fine with it. But we're human, so we can and do sometimes get upset when people harm us. But that's not baseless hatred. Baseless hatred means a person has such a sense of self. We have such a sense of self that someone else I'm already viewing as like my competition, that I don't like them because they're taking up space that threatens my space. Like I used to be, the smartest girl in the class, and now there's this other girl who's maybe equally smart or maybe even smarter, and I don't feel good because now I lost my position because of her. Well, did she do anything wrong to me? No. Does she have any negative feelings for me? No. Is she harming me? No. But her situation, just her being there, makes me less secure in my own situation. I'm giving like a very, simplistic example of the concept. But in a real world, we're told we still haven't rectified that evil, which means looking at anyone, someone was told me on the opposite. I'll say a friend of mine gave me once a beautiful vision. I thought it was so wonderful along, the opposite of these ideas. She said, like, sometimes you can look at other people and you could be like, oh, wow, she's so amazing at that. I can't do that at all. And she's so amazing at that. And I can't do that at all. Now, in our exile, negative, unhealthy, insecure space, you see this person such an awesome mother, it makes you feel bad about yourself. You see this person seems like such a wonderful wife, makes you feel bad about yourself. This person's such a great Rebbitzin. This person's such a great davener. This person gives so much tzedakah. This person has her home open. And the more you see people around you doing all this stuff, it makes you feel bad about yourself. That's the baseless hatred syndrome when you take it a step further and don't like these people because of that. They're not doing anything to you. They're not thinking about you when they're being their own shining self. But because of your own insecurities and issues, you don't like them because they make you feel threatened. So she said, and I thought this was such a beautiful vision. She said, imagine we're all one people. So if I look at you and see you have something I don't have, hey, that's part of me too. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'll never be as patient a mother as her, so I don't feel good about myself when I look at her, and if I don't really like her so much because she makes me feel not good about myself, I could say, wow, we're part of the body of the Jewish people. So maybe this part of the body doesn't have such patience, but I do because she does, and she's part of me. We're one body. And maybe I'm not such a kind, nice person. I'm not going to take all these homeless people into my home, and I don't feel so comfortable. But she does. That's part of me. So instead of feeling bad that I just look at someone else that makes me feel smaller and I don't feel good about me and therefore I don't feel good about them, I'm like, hey, that's me too. That's another part of me, another branch of the Jewish body. So like almost as if trying to flip it in your brain instead of the normal exile knee-jerk response that we don't feel good when we see other people doing all these things we can't do, and it makes us feel worse about ourselves, and if we don't like them, saying, oh, we're all one unit. So everybody else's beautiful quality is just enhancing me as part of this beautiful body, so to speak, of the Jewish people. Not my idea. I'm not patenting it. A friend shared it with me, Johannes Blumberger, to give credit to who said it. But I remember thinking then it was such a beautiful take on this idea of how we can flip that sinas chinam, don't like you because you don't make me feel good about me perspective. But did that clarify it? Again, I'm not going to take a poll. How many people have ever fallen in that slump, in that not good, not healthy space of not feeling good about yourself and therefore not liking the people that make you feel not good about yourself? But it's endemic. It's endemic to the exile. It's been with us for 1900 years. So that's the sinas chinam model. The avas chinam model, baseless love, is just loving the Jewish people. Loving and then figuring out why. Now, how in the world do we get to that? And why we're talking about this now is because this is, to me, just part of this whole concept of perspective. If my perspective is positive, if my perspective is loving, if I say my life is blessed, my life is great, everything around me is so wonderful, then I can look at other people through that paradigm. It's interesting, actually, the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1991 said, we're already past this. We already rectified all that baseless hatred. We already had enough baseless love to clean up that junk. And now, though, it doesn't mean we're off the hook. Now we should have this baseless love for a different reason. To already be living Mashiach, because that's what it will be like. It will be a world of baseless love. A world where everyone has such positive feelings for everyone else before they need to deserve it. And when we live it, we bring it. So the more we live with this baseless love, the more we bring it. So how do you think we create this? Now, this is what I was thinking about. I always love when I get these topics and like, oh, sure, no problem, easy to prepare. What am I supposed to do now? Thinking, what does this mean? And how do we create this? But anyone else's ideas before I share mine? How would you create this feeling of just love, baseless love, positive love for everyone around you, not just for the deserving ones?
I would just say one good deed leads to the next. Like you're driving, you let somebody go, maybe they'll let someone else go, like that kind of stuff.
That's nice.
Smiling at someone, like just simple stuff. I feel like, you do it, they'll pass it on.
Just the chain response of goodness. So I'm going to try to be a bit nicer, and my nicer is going to trigger someone else to be nicer, it's going to trigger someone else to be nicer, and that's going to shift this perspective. Nice. Someone else?
I try and remind myself to stay positive of perspective of other people. It kind of relates to what we were talking about before of how other people view you and how you view others changes the situation. So to try and keep things as best we can, from what we can control. So if I can try and stay positive, even in how I view others. So like giving people the benefit of the doubt and not like thinking like, oh, they're doing that on purpose or they didn't mean to do that,
Exactly what I was going to talk about. Wow, perfect. Both of the things that Dorit said is exactly on my list. Anyone else? All right, well, I'm going to start then, but please feel free to give your ideas. I was going exactly Dorit's direction. I guess our minds were thinking alike. The 2 points she said are exactly my point 1 and 2. I have like 5, but those are my point 1 and 2. So we definitely hit it in the same direction. How do we build this perspective? Like, it's great. We all get it. It makes perfect sense. That's what I was thinking when this topic was suggested. I'm like, it's perfect, great topic. It's gonna take me like 5 minutes. Who could not agree with this? Obviously, it makes sense. Sheer said with her kids, remembering what Dina said about being a child raised this way. Obviously, it's great. So now what? So how do we do it? How do we translate it into the details of our life? So the first point, I think, is exactly what Dorit said, positivity. If I feel my life is so blessed, my world is so good, I'm going to take whatever happens and put it within that framework. It's just natural. If I want to have a positive perspective on other people, on other events, I start by having a positive perspective on my life, which may be sort of like what Shira was saying about a little goodness to another goodness to another goodness. I'm starting by looking at me and saying, I've got a great life. If I have a great life, when I look outward at everything, it's fitting within that paradigm of a great life, of a good world, of a happy world, of a happy life. So if I really want to live with this perspective, it starts at home. It starts with me. I can't give it to my kids if I don't have it inside of me. I mean, you could try. You could try. But it's a lot easier to give it to your husband and to give it to your kids and to give it to your neighbors and to give it to your colleagues and to give it to all the randomness in your life when you really, 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 with a lot of work, look at your life and think it's so good. Because the more you think that, the more you look at the world and see it as so good. Okay, I'm going to come back soon to going a little more deeply in that, but that was my first thing, just like Dorit. And my second thing is also just like Dorit. She said something else that's so in line with this, which is how we judge other people. We all know the Hebrew phrase, dan lekaf zechus, which means judge people favor. Now, we've discussed this in the past, and we've said very powerful thought in terms of judging others, and judging others is just interwoven with our perspective on others, because our perspective is our judgment of them. So how we judge others is how God judges us. Wow, that really should help us be very positive in our judgment. So when I look at the world around me favorably, positive, that's how I want God to look at me. When I see people with a positive eye, when I reframe what people are doing and make it good, even if it didn't seem so good, well, that's how I want Hashem to look at me. That's how I want to be judged. I want my weaknesses to be looked at in a kinder way, like, oh, yeah, I understand. I understand what you did came from your stresses, from your exhaustion, from your lack of healthy food. Very interesting. I heard this literally this week. I never heard this before. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayat, said, you know, there's this concept when Mashiach comes that there will be Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. A lot of people are like, who wants Mashiach? Who wants that day of judgment? So the Rebbe Rayat says that what's going to happen by that day of judgment sounds very scary. He said on that day, God will look at every single Jew with compassion. And God will say, I understand why you did what you did. I understand the pressures you were under. I understand how those pressures affected you, how they made you small, how they made you mean, how they made you unkind, how they made you not so godly. I understand. You were under a lot. So God will judge every single one, but so kindly, so favorably on that day of judgment. We are all going to come out victorious in judgment. That's how we should look at other people. That's how we should process what every other person does. Such a simple example. This happened to me like last night. I was thinking of it because I was thinking about these concepts. So I was telling my son, and I told him to stand up so I could put on him a diaper before he goes to sleep. I put him on a diaper. He's officially not really, we'll call it functionally toilet trained, but definitely at night he needs a diaper. So I tell him to stand up so I can put him a diaper. So what does he do? He lies down on the floor. Now, of course, it's so easy. I'm giving a very small example just to show how this is insidious in every moment of our life. It's so easy to say, oh, I tell him stand up, so he goes and lies down on the floor. But since I had just been thinking a lot about these concepts for this class, I was like, oh, he's not bedafka. He's not doing it to exactly do the opposite of what I'm telling him. It's not a I'm going against you situation. It's just a fact. And it removes like the whole negativity from that obviously very little act. The whole stress from that very little situation. That's a very small example. But I'm sharing it because we start with those small little details. When someone does something and we're thinking, oh, they did that deliberately. My kid deliberately didn't hear when I told him 3 times and he said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was ignoring me the whole time. Or my husband, or my friend, or anyone in my world. We color things with our insecurities, with our feelings. And that makes the situation so much more negative, so much more stressful. If we just go back to this model, I thought this was such a beautiful model. Maybe because I never heard it before. I was so affected by it. This idea of this, this classical term, the day of judgment, and like everyone's like, oh, that horrible, mean day of judgment, and envisioning it like the Rebbe Rayach, the priest of Rebbe said, it's a day when God looks at you with a kind eye and says, I get it. I know you were stressed. I know you were overwhelmed. I know you were juggling way too much. That's why you did everything you did that wasn't right. It was just because of all that. If those factors weren't there, you wouldn't have done any of that.
Wait, so I have a question, Mrs. Kern.
Sure.
So without this judgment day with Mashiach of Hashem being compassionate towards us, what would the judgment be without that? So it would be
more
well,
factual.
You should have known better. You should have known better.
Exactly.
I get into situations.
They would have been the hard facts of the case.
Everyone does, where you react in a certain way, and especially with my kids. And then later on, I'm like, I should have been more patient. I shouldn't have snapped. I'm sorry, or if you don't apologize, you do, or whatever. But like, does Hashem take that into account when those situations happen? Or is it like, no, you screwed up. Sorry, you blew it.
You're saying, I don't know if on a daily basis Hashem does. This is like this is in the verses, in the prophets. They speak about Mashiach and they say, Yom Hadin Hagadol V'Hanora. And there are people who will literally say, why in the world do you want Mashiach? Like, that's that big, harsh day when everything's put on the table. I mean, who wants to deal with that? So we're told it's going to be a day of a lot of compassion. So you're saying, and tonight, because by the way, we're judged every night. We're judged, Mashiach. We're judged every night. We're judged annually. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's coming up pretty soon, by the way. I know we're like in the middle of the summer. We're almost there. And of course, we're judged at the end of our lifetime. So are those judgments all colored by compassion and kindness? And I know you were exhausted or you messed it up. So we're taught is the type of judgment we receive is based on how we judge others. And when we look at the world through that paradigm of he totally doesn't think of me. How could he forget when I specifically told him on your way home from work, da, 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 and he like totally blew it, didn't remember at all. I'm that meaningless to him. Or the compassion of, oh, he was thinking about so many other things. He's got so much on his head. I would have been exactly the same way. So how we look at others and judge them is creating the judgments we get now. By Mashiach, it's a free gift for all of us. But now, tonight, I'm going to be judged tonight. You're going to be judged tonight. How Hashem is judging us tonight is colored by how we look at the world around us, how we judge others. And as you said, that's like foundation in positivity. You can't talk about positivity without talking about how we look at others and how we honestly judge, because we're judging all the time. So we're not going to say, oh, I'm going to be non-judgmental. That's a meaningless statement. It's going to say, I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to create very creative stories of benefit of the doubt for people. That's exactly how we want God to look at us. I would think if we could do this, because like this is reality, we all go through this like every minute. We're dealing with people, so we are judging and being judged and judging and being judged and judging and being judged all day long. Take a situation that you know will happen, because it always happens in your life, in your world. A situation that you regularly get upset and judgmental. We say judgmental meaning negative. Plan how you're going to positively apply this compassionate judgment